Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of my podcast. This is going to be about language and how it represents on our daily basis. We are going to talk about language and society, language and its variations, and we will also be talking about the origins of language. But why are we going to talk about language? Well, this is because it is an interesting topic. Yeah, just because of that. As simple as that. Language is the basis of our communication. Either we talk or write. Language is the most basic concept in our society. Our most important and basic tool, well, not that basic, since it's a very complex thing. But you get the point. I will also be relating language and each topic to TEFL, or teaching English as a foreign language. I am Matias, and let's get started. For our first topic, we are talking about the origins of language and how we can relate it to TEFL. Have you ever wondered what the origins of our language are? Well, it is safe to say that there has always existed language in human history. Has it always been like it is nowadays? Maybe. We can argue that since prehistoric age, humans used symbolisms and sounds to communicate like we do now. But it has always been complex. It is unique on its own way. To make this more interesting, have you guys thought if animals can communicate or have their own language? We can see that animals do communicate with sounds mostly, for example, cats meowing or dogs barking. But it does not even come close to how we humans communicate with each other. We humans can go to some friend's house and enjoy a good football game, drink beer and say, "Hey, this beer is good." As far as we know, other primates are not doing that. It is also important to tell you guys some characteristics of human language. For example, that it is unconscious. We learn how to communicate since we are born, even if we don't know how to speak or write, and then even when we know how to speak but not how to write or read. Isn't that amazing? When we get to understand how language is formed, we are aware of how sounds work, how words work, and we get to know the system of this tool, rules, structures, meanings, etc. This is important in the TEFL context since it helps visualizing how deep and complex human language is. Educators can emphasize how powerful of a tool language is. They can also realize how it has evolved over the years, how important this is in human society, and engage students in their learning process. Knowing the characteristics of language also helps develop critical thinking and helps to a better understanding of our own way of learning and communicating. Moving on to language and society. As we discussed before, language is important in our society. It settles the way we communicate with each other. When it comes to think how we transform language in different society contexts, there is a lot to talk about. We talk differently depending on who we are talking to and where we are talking. There is a lot of concepts to cover on this topic. We have speech commodities, register, jargon, style shifting, code switching, and more. Starting with jargon and register, jargon is how two or more people speak using specific words on a technical level. It is common in professional fields like medicine. If you hear a conversation between two surgeons, it is very likely that you are not going to understand a word of their conversation. Terms like atrial fibrillation, benign, edema, and more. Register is what we call when our language varies in specific contexts or situations. For instance, going to the church or religious events or going to the court where a trial is being held, you are going to change the way you speak and even the way you behave. Continuing with style shifting and code switching, we can say those are related. Both refer to adapting to different social contexts, but the difference between both is that code switching happens in multilingual contexts, which means interacting in more than one language, and style shifting is more related to formal and informal contexts like a job interview. Another term that I want to discuss is speech communities. This concept kind of covers or takes our previous concepts and put them on practice. Speech communities are groups of people sharing interests, culture, languages, and share them in a particular social context. For instance, gaming houses, academic environments, and sports events show how speech communities work. I think this topic is important to TEFL since it shows students how versatile language is. It improves their communication skills, understanding different contexts and the language we are supposed to use. It also promotes cultural awareness and adaptiveness. Can you imagine talking in a job interview in the same way you talk to your friends while playing games online? That would be hilarious. But not so much, because you would lose your opportunity on getting that job. But you get the point. We are going to move on and talk about language variation. Moving on to our last topic, which is language variation, I am going to focus on the concept of standard English, which covers speech style, rules of usage, accent, and dialect, among other concepts. We have talked about how language has changed over the years, how it changes depending on different contexts, and now we are going to talk about how it changes depending on culture. When we talk about language variation, we talk about how language changes or becomes diverse depending on different communities and regional factors. These changes are noticeable on accents, dialects, which are similar but not quite. Accent is focused more on pronunciation, while dialect is a bit more complex. It has accent involved indeed, and dialect also refers to differences on vocabulary, grammar, and how language is used. The best example I can think of are our Chilean friends. They talk Spanish, but it is a unique type of Spanish. It is not only different from Argentinian Spanish on how it sounds, they even have their own words, their own way to speak, not only talking Spanish with a different accent. Standard English is establishing a single way to speak English regarding grammar, spelling, pronunciation, and vocabulary. This idealization of one and only one way to speak English becomes an issue when we think about our identity. We know that even if we speak the same language, this language is different among the countries that speak it. We talked about Chilean Spanish and Argentinian Spanish, but when it comes to English, we think of Australian English, American English, etc. Each of these countries have their own way to speak English, and making this language have a standard makes other countries sort of lose their identities. Dialect reflects the identity of each person, and when people are forced to speak in a specific way, identity is compromised. I think this topic is important on TEFL, since identity is a very important thing to teach to students. Teaching about language variations validates the existence of diverse English varieties. It validates each individual dialect and culture. This way, education becomes more inclusive and students become cultured, tolerant, and would have a deeper appreciation on languages. Well, the end of our episode has come. Thanks for being here with me on this language journey. It was quite interesting, wasn't it? I loved how we were able to know more about this tool we use every day of our existence, how it started, how it has evolved, and how it changes depending on different contexts. Language is a powerful tool, and I hope you enjoyed learning about it with me while we got to have a critical view on TEFL. Thank you again for being here with me, and I hope you have a great day.